The British Museum. Sub-Basement 3. Department of Anomalous Antiquities. My name is Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, Senior Archivist, Custodian of Restricted Collections. What you are about to hear has been recovered from sealed files, letters, journals, and testimonies once thought too disturbing for public record. Every statement you hear is drawn from Britain's forgotten centuries, the whispered history that hides between faith and fear. These are the National Occult Archives, filed, preserved, never closed. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file, NOE 1549C, classification, Canon's record, date of statement, 3rd November, 1549, location, Durham. Author, Canon, Richard Stonewell, record 1, Canon Richard Stonewell. Do record what appears in the cathedral cloister at Compline. Every night at Compline, the final prayers before sleep. A procession walks the cloister, 12 monks in black habits, moving in perfect silence, following the path they walked in life. They are not living monks. Our cathedral has no monastery attached. These monks passed 300 years ago when the monastery was dissolved, but they maintain their routine still, archived in their devotions, preserved in their nightly walk. I first saw them during my night vigil. I knelt in prayer when I heard footsteps, soft footsteps, like bare feet on stone. The monks appeared, walking single file, hands folded, heads bowed. They passed within arm's reach of me. I felt cold, deep cold, the cold of 3 centuries, the cold of archived time, the cold of preservation that spans generations. "Who are you?" I whispered. The lead monk paused. He turned his head slowly. His face was grey, drawn. His eyes were hollow. "We are the preserved," he said. His voice was like wind through empty chambers. "We walk compline still. We cannot stop. We are filed in this devotion. We are archived in this routine." "Why do you not rest?" I asked. "We tried," he said. "When the monastery was dissolved, when we were sent away, we tried to rest. But our devotions were too strong. Our routine was too deeply filed. Our prayers were too perfectly preserved. We could not stop walking compline. We could not cease our nightly procession. So we returned. We walk still. We will walk forever, archived in devotion that cannot end." The monks continued their walk. They completed the cloister circuit. Then they faded, slowly, like morning mist, until they were gone. But they return every night. Same time, same procession, same silent devotion. The archived monks maintaining their routine, preserved in their prayers, filed in their nightly walk. Other clergy have seen them. We no longer use the cloister at Compline. We give the monks their space, their time, their archived moment of devotion. Last week, young Brother Thomas walked the cloister during compline. He did not know about the monks. He encountered them in the darkness. They welcomed him. They made space in their procession. They invited him to walk with them, to join their archived devotion, to be preserved in their eternal routine. Brother Thomas walked with them, one circuit of the cloister. When he returned to the starting point, he tried to leave the procession, but the monks held him, not physically, but spiritually. They had filed him into their routine. They had archived him in their procession. They had preserved him as part of their eternal walk. It took 3 priests to pull Brother Thomas free. We prayed over him. We blessed him. We broke the connection between him and the archived monks. But Brother Thomas is changed. Each night at Compline he feels the pull. He wants to walk the cloister. He wants to join the procession. He wants to be filed with the monks, preserved in their routine, archived in their eternal devotion. We keep him locked in his cell during compline, for his safety, for his soul, because we know if he walks with the monks again, he will not return. He will be archived completely. He will be preserved forever. He will walk compline for eternity, filed away in devotion that spans centuries. The monks walk still, every night, maintaining their routine, preserved in their prayers, and they watch for others to join them, to be filed in their procession, to be archived in devotion that never ends. Canon Richard Stonewell, Durham, 3rd November, 1549. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file, NOA 1687S classification, Sexton statement. Date of statement, 19th May 1687. Location, Cornwall. Author, James Bellringer, Sexton statement. James Bellringer, Sexton of St. Petrock's Church. Do state what I found in the bell tower. My duty is ringing the church bells. I climb the tower stairs daily, ring for services, ring for weddings, ring for those who have passed. But one bell rings by itself. The smallest bell, oldest bell, cast 400 years ago. It rings at midnight, every midnight, without anyone pulling its rope. I investigated. I climbed the tower at midnight. I watched the bell. As the hour struck, the bell began to move, not swinging on its mount, but ringing, chiming, as though invisible hands pulled its rope. Then I saw him, the first bell ringer, transparent, barely visible, standing at the rope, pulling it with the same rhythm he had used in life, ringing the bell as he had rung it 4 centuries ago. "Why do you still ring?" I called up to him. He looked down at me. His face was worn, tired. "I cannot stop," he said. "I rang this bell every day of my life. 40 years of ringing. The rhythm filed itself into my bones. The pattern archived itself in my soul. When I passed, I continued ringing. I am preserved in this motion. I am maintained in this duty. I will ring forever." "Do you want to stop?" I asked. "More than anything," he said. "But I cannot. The bell has archived me. It has filed me in its ringing. It has preserved me in its sound. I am part of the bell now. I will ring as long as the bell exists." I wanted to help him, but I did not know how. How do you free someone archived in sound? How do you release someone preserved in motion? Other bell ringers have joined him. I see them now when I climb the tower at midnight, 5 of them. All the bell ringers from 4 centuries, all still pulling ropes, all still ringing bells, all archived in their duty, preserved in their motion, maintained in actions they cannot stop. They ring together. A perfect peal. Complex patterns that take years to learn. They ring with precision born of centuries of practice. They are the best bell ringers who ever lived, because they have been ringing for centuries, because they are preserved in perfect practice, because they are filed in eternal motion, but they are prisoners, prisoners in sound, archived in ringing that never stops, preserved in duty that has no end. The church wants to remove the bells. They are old, cracked, dangerous. But I protest. If we remove the bells, what happens to the ringers? They are filed in the bells. They are preserved in the bronze. They are archived in the metal. If we destroy the bells, do we destroy them? Or do we finally free them? I do not know. So the bells remain. And every midnight, the archived ringers pull their ropes. They ring their patterns. They maintain their duty. preserved forever in sound, filed away in motion, archived in ringing that echoes through centuries. James Bellringer, Sexton, Cornwall, 19th May, 1687. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file. NOA 1512 A classification. Abbess's journal. Date of statement 27th August 1512. Location Yorkshire. Author Abbess Eleanor of Whitby. Journal entry 1. Abbess Eleanor. Do record the sister who prays in tongues she never learned. Sister Catherine was simple nun, devoted, faithful, but uneducated. She knew her prayers in English and basic Latin. Nothing more. 3 weeks ago, she began speaking during night prayers. Not English, not Latin. Ancient languages, Greek, Aramaic, Hebrew. Languages she had never studied, never heard. I questioned her. Sister Catherine, how do you know these languages? She looked at me with frightened eyes. I do not know them, Mother Abbess, she said. They know me. They speak through me. I am vessel for archived prayers. I am preservation of ancient words. I am filing system for languages that should be forgotten. What do you mean? I asked. The convent is old, she said, built on ruins of older convent. And that convent was built on ruins of older still. This ground has been holy for 1,000 years. All the prayers ever spoken here are archived in the stones. All the words ever prayed here are preserved in the walls. And now they speak through me. I am their voice. I am their preservation. During prayers now, Sister Catherine speaks in many tongues. She prays in languages from ages past. She recites liturgies from forgotten rites. She chants in voices that are not her own. Old women's voices, children's voices, men's voices. All the archived prayers speaking through her, using her mouth, her breath, her living flesh to continue existing. Other sisters are frightened. They believe she is possessed. But I know better. She is not possessed. She is archived. She is being used as filing system. She is preservation in flesh form. The prayers grow stronger. Each night, Sister Catherine speaks longer, in more languages, in more voices. The archived prayers are using her increasingly. They have found vessel for their preservation. They will not release her. Sister Catherine grows weak. The prayers drain her. She eats little, sleeps less. She exists only to speak archived words, to voice preserved prayers, to maintain ancient devotions through her failing body. I tried to stop it. I removed Sister Catherine from the convent. I sent her to Sister House 20 miles away, but the archived prayers followed her. Or perhaps she carried them with her. Perhaps she is the archive now. Perhaps the prayers have filed themselves so completely in her that she cannot escape them, cannot be separated from them. She returned to our convent last week. I must be here, she said. The prayers want to be here. This is their home. This is where they were spoken. This is where they must be preserved. I am just the vessel. I am just the filing system. I am just the archive that maintains them. Sister Catherine prays constantly now, day and night, in languages beyond counting. The archive prayers flow through her without ceasing. She is preservation personified. She is filing made flesh. She is archive that speaks. I fear she will not last long. Her body weakens. But the prayers do not weaken. They grow stronger, feeding on her life, draining her vitality to maintain their preservation, using her completely to ensure their continuation. When she passes, will the prayers pass with her? Or will they find new vessel? Will another sister begin speaking in ancient tongues? Will the archived prayers file themselves into new flesh, into new voice, into new preservation? I do not know. But I watch Sister Catherine wasting away, speaking prayers older than England, maintaining archives that should have been silent centuries ago, preserving through her own destruction the words that will not die, that will not rest, that will not allow themselves to be forgotten. Abbess Eleanor of Whitby, Yorkshire, 27th August, 1512. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 43M. Classification Mason's account. Date of statement 14th October 1643. Location Somerset. Author William Stone, Master Mason. Account 1 William Stone. Do account for what I found sealed in the church wall. I was hired to repair St. Mary's Church. The north wall had cracked, threatening collapse. We needed to remove stones and rebuild the wall properly. When we removed the stones, we found a space, a cavity in the wall, and in that cavity sat a me, or what had been a man, perfectly preserved, perfectly still, walled up alive centuries ago. He wore monk's robes, ancient and dusty. His hands were pressed together in prayer. His eyes were open. His mouth was open. He had been praying when they sealed him in. Anchorite, said the priest when I called him. A holy man sealed in the wall to pray perpetually for the parish. Common practice 400 years ago. But he's still here, I said. Still preserved. Still praying, the priest finished. Look closely. I looked. The anchorite's lips moved, barely, but they moved, forming words, silent words, prayers spoken in total darkness for 400 years. Is he alive? I asked. No, said the priest. But he is not gone either. He is archived, preserved in his devotion, filed in the wall, maintained in prayer that transcends the boundary between life and what comes after. We could not continue the repair. The anchorite occupied the wall. We could not remove him without destroying the wall completely. But word spread. People came to see the praying anchorite. They pressed ears to the crack in the wall. They heard him, whispering prayers in Latin. Pater Noster, Ave Maria, Kyrie eleison. The same prayers repeated endlessly, preserved for centuries in the darkness of the wall. Some claimed the prayers had power, that prayers prayed for 400 years had accumulated strength, that archived devotion was more powerful than living devotion. Sick people came. They touched the cracked wall. They asked the anchorite to pray for them, and some reported healing, not medical healing, but spiritual healing. Peace, acceptance, relief from suffering. The church sealed the crack. They did not want pilgrims. They did not want attention. They wanted the anchorite to remain archived, preserved, filed away in the wall where he had been for 4 centuries. But I still hear him. When I pass that church, when I stand near that wall, I hear the whispered prayers. Pater Noster quies in caelis. Our Father who art in heaven. Prayed without ceasing, preserved in darkness, archived in stone, maintained for 400 years and continuing still. Is he suffering, or is he at peace? Does archived prayer bring joy or torment? Is he trapped or transcendent? I do not know, but I know he prays still, filed in the wall, preserved in stone, archived in devotion that death did not end, that centuries did not silence, that darkness did not stop. The church stands, the wall remains, and inside, in the sealed cavity, the anchorite continues his eternal prayer, archived in the stones, preserved by his devotion, maintained by something that transcends both life and death, both time and eternity. William Stone, Master Mason, Somerset, 14th October, 1643. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file, NOA 11729P. Classification, Physician's Notes. Date of statement, 9th January, 1729. Location, London. Author, Dr. Samuel Graves. Notes: I, Dr. Samuel Graves, do note the patient who remembers dying. Mrs. Margaret Fletcher came to my surgery with unusual complaint. She remembered dying, not fearing death, not imagining death, actually remembering her own passing 3 weeks prior. I remember my heart stopping, she said. I remember my last breath. I remember leaving my body. I remember being archived. Then I woke in my bed alive again, with my daughter weeping over me. You survived a near-death episode, I said. It is not uncommon to have strange memories from such experiences. No, she insisted. I did not nearly pass. I passed completely. I was gone for 3 days. My family prepared my body for burial. They washed me, they dressed me, they laid me in my coffin. Then, at my wake, I opened my eyes and sat up. I examined her medical history. Her family confirmed her account. Margaret Fletcher had shown no signs of life for 3 days. No breath, no pulse, no warmth. By all measures, she had passed. Then she had returned. What do you remember from those 3 days? I asked. I remember being filed, she said. Not in place, in state. I was archived between living and gone. I was preserved in moment of transition. I was maintained in space where the departed wait before moving on. What is that space like? Dark, she said, but not empty. Full of others, all the recently gone, all waiting to be properly filed, properly archived, properly preserved in whatever comes next. We stood together in darkness. We were processed, sorted, evaluated, then filed away into appropriate preservation. But you returned, I said. How? I was misfiled, she said simply. The archive made error. I was not meant to pass yet. So I was returned. I was unfiled. I was sent back to living world to complete my proper time before being archived permanently. Since her return, Margaret Fletcher has been different. She knows things she should not know. She knows when others will pass. She can see the archive mark on them, the sign that they will soon be filed away. Mr. Thomas will pass within week, she told me last month. Mr. Thomas seemed healthy, but he passed 5 days later, suddenly, from heart failure. Miss Sarah carries archive mark, she said of young woman. She will pass before summer. Miss Sarah seemed vibrant, full of life, but she took fever in May and passed in June. Margaret Fletcher sees the archive preparing to file people away. She sees the preservation system selecting who will be archived next. She sees death not as ending, but as filing, as being permanently preserved, as being archived into whatever storage system maintains those who have left this world. Other patients who survived near death report similar experiences. They remember being briefly archived. They remember the filing process. They remember being evaluated, sorted, prepared for preservation. They all speak of the archive as vast, orderly, efficient. A preservation system beyond human comprehension. A filing system that maintains everyone who has ever lived. An archive that never loses a single entry, that preserves perfectly. that files permanently. Margaret Fletcher will pass again. She knows this. She sees her own archive mark growing stronger. I will be properly filed soon, she says calmly. My time is coming. The archive is preparing space for me. I will be preserved permanently, archived forever, maintained in the vast storage system of the gone. She's not afraid. She has seen the archive. She knows it works. She trusts the filing system. She believes in the preservation. But I wonder, is she right? Is there truly an archive for those who pass? Are we filed away, preserved, maintained in some vast system? Or is Margaret Fletcher's mind creating order from chaos, imposing filing system on mystery we cannot understand? I do not know. But I watch her calmly preparing for her own archiving, peacefully awaiting her own preservation, serenely accepting her filing into the system she briefly glimpsed during her 3 days between living and gone. Dr. Samuel Graves, London, 9th January, 1729. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 13778H. Classification Herbalist record. Date of statement 23rd June 1578. Location Devon. Author Goodwife. Mary Plantwell, Herbalist. Record 1 Mary Plantwell. Do record the garden where the dead are planted. Behind the old monastery ruins lies a garden. Not ordinary garden, a burial garden, where the dead are planted like seeds and grow like flowers. I discovered it by accident. I was gathering herbs in the ruins when I saw flowers I did not recognize. Strange pale blooms growing in neat rows, as though planted deliberately. I dug near one plant, thinking to transplant it. My spade struck something solid. I dug more carefully. I found a hand, a human hand perfectly preserved, growing the pale flower from its palm. I stepped back, horrified. But curiosity overcame fear. I examined other plants. Each grew from a body. The dead, planted in soil, preserved in earth, growing flowers from their flesh. The flowers were beautiful, unique, each different, reflecting the person it grew from. An old man grew white roses. A young woman grew lilies. A child grew forget-me-nots. I told no one. I visited the garden regularly. I watched the flowers bloom and fade and bloom again. The dead were archived in the earth, preserved as living gardens, filed as growing things. Then I found fresh digging. Someone was maintaining the garden. Someone was planting new dead, adding to the archive, expanding the preservation. I hid and watched. At midnight, a monk appeared. Ancient monk, wearing tattered robes. He carried a body wrapped in cloth. He dug a grave. He planted the body carefully. He prayed over it in Latin. Then he disappeared. The next day, a new flower sprouted where he had planted. The dead were being archived quickly, preserved efficiently, filed as growing garden. I confronted the monk. Why do you plant the dead? He looked at me with empty eyes. I am the gardener, he said. I have always been the gardener. For 500 years, I have tended this garden. I archive the dead who are brought to me. I preserve them in earth. I file them as growing things. This is my duty. This is my preservation. Who brings you the dead? They bring themselves, he said. Those who want to be archived differently. Those who want to be preserved as life rather than decay. Those who want to be filed as growing rather than rotting. They come here at their ending. They lie down in the garden, and I plant them. I have seen them since. The dying walking to the garden, lying down among the flowers, waiting for the gardener to plant them, to archive them as blooms, to preserve them as living growth. Is this better than burial? Is this better than decay? To be archived as flower, to be preserved as growing thing, to be filed as garden rather than grave? I do not know. But the garden grows. More dead are planted. More flowers bloom. The archive expands. The preservation continues. The filing grows ever larger. I tend the garden now. I help the ancient gardener. When dying come, I help plant them. I water them. I care for them as they transform from flesh to flower, from body to bloom, from human to archived growth. Each flower is person. Each bloom is memory. Each plant is preserved life, filed in earth, archived as growing thing. The garden is cemetery and nursery both. Death and life combined. Ending and beginning merged. The dead grow here. They bloom here. They are preserved here in form more beautiful than any coffin, more living than any tomb. They are archived in earth and sun and rain. They are filed in the cycles of growth and rest. They are maintained as part of nature's preservation, nature's filing, nature's archive. Goodwife Mary Plantwell, Herbalist, Devon, 23rd June, 1578. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file. Noe 1991R. Classification. Rector's testimony. Date of statement. 11th December 1691. Location. Suffolk. Author. Reverend Thomas Caldwell. Testimony. Reverend Thomas Caldwell. Do testify about the church that only exists in fog. My parish sits on the Suffolk coast. On clear days I see the sea, the cliffs, the marshes. But in fog, I see a different church. An older church. A church that should not exist. The fog church appears in same location as my church. But it is not my church. It is larger, older, built in Norman style. It has tower my church lacks. It has bells my church does not possess. First time I saw it, I thought the fog was creating illusions. But when I entered, the interior was solid, real. Stone floors, wooden pews, altar carved with ancient saints. And there were worshippers, dozens of them, dressed in clothing from centuries past, kneeling in prayer, chanting in Latin, conducting Mass according to rites not used for 500 years. A priest stood at the altar. He turned when I entered. His face was grey, hollow. "Welcome," he said. "You are late for Mass." "What is this place?" I asked. "This is the true church," he said. "The original church, built 800 years ago. Your church is copy, replacement, built on our ruins. But we never left. We were archived in fog. We were preserved in mist. When fog comes, we return. We conduct our eternal Mass. We maintain our devotions. We are filed in the fog, preserved in moisture, archived in the air itself." "How long have you been here?" "Since the great storm," he said. 800 years ago. The sea flooded the land. The church was destroyed. The parish drowned. But our faith was so strong, our devotion so perfect, that we were preserved. We were archived in the fog that followed the flood. We have conducted Mass every foggy day since. We are permanent congregation, eternal parish, archived worship that fog preserves. I attended their Mass. I knelt with the fog congregants. I prayed with the archived faithful. The service was beautiful, ancient, preserved perfectly from centuries past. When the fog lifted, the church vanished. I stood in my own church again, small, modern, empty. The fog church was gone, but it returns every fog, the archived church manifesting, the preserved congregation gathering, the filed worship continuing across 8 centuries. My parishioners sometimes see it. They enter my church in fog and find themselves in the older, larger fog church. They attend services with the archived congregants. They pray with people who passed 800 years ago. Most are frightened, but some find peace. They prefer the fog church. They wait for foggy days to attend the archived Mass, to worship with the preserved congregation, to participate in services that transcend time itself. Last week, old Mrs. Pemberton entered the fog church and did not return. When fog cleared, she was gone. We found her body in my church, kneeling peacefully, hands clasped in prayer. She had passed during the fog Mass. But I wonder, is she truly gone? Or is she archived now in the fog church? Does she worship still with the preserved congregation? Has she joined the eternal Mass, the filed service, the archived devotion that continues every foggy day? The fog comes often to our coast, and each time the old church appears, the ancient congregation gathers, the archived Mass continues. 800 years of preservation, 800 years of filing, 800 years of worship maintained in fog that will not release them, that will not let them rest, that keeps them serving, keeps them praying, keeps them archived in eternal devotion. Reverend Thomas Caldwell, Suffolk, 11th December, 1691. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file, NOA 56S classification, Shepherd's account, date of statement, 5th March, 1556. Location, Welsh Mountains. Author, Owain ap Rhys. Shepherd account 1, Owain ap Rhys. Do account for the stone circle that collects prayers. High in the mountains stands a circle of 9 stones, ancient stones, older than memory, older than the Romans, older than the Druids even. The stones hum, not with sound exactly, but with something felt rather than heard, a vibration, a resonance, a preserved energy that radiates from the ancient rock. I discovered the stone's purpose by accident. I was sheltering from rain inside the circle. I prayed aloud, asking God for protection, for safe passage home. The stones responded. They glowed faintly. They hummed louder, and my prayer echoed back to me, not as sound, but as feeling. The stones had absorbed my prayer. They had archived it. They had filed it away in their ancient structure. I experimented. I spoke another prayer. Again, the stones absorbed it. Again, I felt my prayer filed away, preserved in rock, archived in the circle. The stones collect prayers, all prayers spoken near them. For thousands of years they have collected. They have preserved. They have filed away every prayer ever uttered in these mountains, and they give prayers back. When I stand in the circle, I feel them. Thousands of prayers, tens of thousands, all archived in the stones, all preserved in the rock, all filed in the ancient circle. I feel prayers in languages I do not know. I feel prayers from religions long forgotten. I feel prayers older than Christianity, older than Rome, older than any recorded history. The stones are archive of faith, filing system of devotion, preservation of prayer across millennia. But the stones do not just store prayers, they answer them, not with words, but with knowing. When you pray in the circle, you feel responses. not God's voice exactly, but the collected wisdom of 10,000 years of archived prayer. All the answers ever prayed, all the comfort ever sought, all the hope ever expressed. The stones share their archive. They offer their preservation. They give access to their filing of faith. Others have discovered the circle. Pilgrims come. They pray. They add their prayers to the archive. They receive wisdom from the preserved prayers. They connect with thousands of years of filed devotion. But something troubles me. The stones are filling. They hum more loudly now. They glow more brightly. They are reaching capacity. 10,000 years of archived prayers are straining the stone's ability to preserve them. What happens when the stones are full? What happens when the archive can hold no more? Will the prayers spill out? Will 10,000 years of filed devotion flood the mountains? Will the preserved faith overwhelm the present? I do not know, but I feel the stone straining. I feel the archive struggling. I feel the preservation reaching its limits. The circle stands, the stones hum, the prayers accumulate, and I wonder how much longer the ancient archive can maintain its filing, can preserve its contents, can hold the ever-growing collection of prayers that spans all of human history in these mountains. Owen ap Rhys, Shepherd Welsh. Mountains, 5th March, 1556. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file. Noe Sexton 1 V. Classification. Vicar's Journal. Date of statement. 29th September. 1617. Location, Norfolk. Author, Reverend Peter Holiness. Journal entry 1. Reverend Peter Holiness. Do record the Bible that reads itself. In our church library sits an ancient Bible, chained to its lectern, 800 years old, handwritten on vellum by monks long departed. The Bible is active. The pages turn by themselves. The text rearranges itself. The words change depending on who reads them. I discovered this during my study. I opened the Bible to read morning scripture. The text was standard, the familiar verses I had read hundreds of times. But as I watched, the words shifted. Letters rearranged. New text appeared. The Bible was rewriting itself, customizing its message for me specifically, pulling from its archived knowledge to create exactly the scripture I needed in that moment. How is this possible? I whispered. The words rearranged again, answering my question in biblical language. I am living word. I am preserved wisdom. I am archived scripture that speaks to each reader individually, that files away 800 years of understanding, that preserves every interpretation ever made of my text. The Bible had archived every reading, every interpretation, every sermon, every prayer spoken over it during 800 years. All of that was filed in its pages. All of that influenced how it presented scripture to each new reader. Other clergy came to read the archived Bible. Each received different text. Each saw words customized for their needs, their questions, their spiritual state. The Bible was not static document. It was living archive, active filing system, dynamic preservation that adapted to each reader. But there were dangers. Brother Martin spent 6 hours reading the archived Bible. He became lost in its customized scriptures. The Bible showed him texts within texts, interpretations within interpretations, archived meanings within archived meanings. He descended into layers of filed wisdom until he could not find his way back to surface meaning. Brother Martin speaks now only in scripture, only in customized verses that the Bible created specifically for him. He is archived in the Bible's wisdom, preserved in its interpretations, filed in its layers of meaning. We limit access to the archived Bible now. 15 minutes maximum. Enough time to receive customized scripture, but not enough time to become lost in the endless filing of interpretations, the infinite preservation of meanings, the bottomless archive of wisdom. The Bible continues rewriting itself. It continues customizing. It continues filing away every reading, every interpretation, every new understanding. Its archive grows with each reader. Its preservation expands with each use. Its filing becomes more complex, more layered, more impossible to fully comprehend. Is this how all sacred texts should work? Living, adapting, preserving all understandings, filing all interpretations, maintaining active archive rather than static text? I do not know. But I know our archived Bible is more than book. It is living preservation. It is active filing system. It is dynamic archive that speaks differently to each reader, that customizes scripture for each need, that preserves 800 years of wisdom in pages that will not remain still, that will not stay fixed, that will not stop adapting, filing, preserving, archiving every new reading into their ever-growing collection of meanings. Reverend Peter Holiness Norfolk, 29th September, 1617, end of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file, NOA 11745D, classification, Deacon's Report. Date of statement, 7th February 1745. Location, Dorset. Author, Deacon Samuel Worship Report. 1. Deacon Samuel Worship. Do report the shadow that prays in the chapel. Our chapel has a shadow, not caused by sunlight or candlelight. A shadow that exists independently, that moves on its own, that kneels in prayer at the altar regardless of time or light. The shadow is man-shaped, kneeling, hands clasped, head bowed, in perpetual posture of prayer. I first noticed it at dawn. I entered the chapel for morning prayers. The shadow was there, kneeling at the altar, darker than the pre-dawn darkness, more solid than any natural shadow should be. "Who are you?" I called. The shadow did not respond, but I felt its prayer, not heard it, but felt it. Deep devotion, pure faith, absolute dedication. The shadow was prayer given form, devotion made visible, faith archived as darkness. I researched the chapel's history. 500 years ago, a hermit lived here. He prayed constantly. For 40 years, he knelt at this altar, never ceasing his devotions. When he passed, he was found kneeling, praying still, his spirit so filed in prayer that his body maintained the position even after death. The shadow is his preserved prayer, his archived devotion, his filed faith. He passed, but his prayer did not. His body ended, but his devotion continued. His flesh failed, but his faith remained. Preserved as shadow, archived as darkness, filed as eternal prayer that continues 500 years after the man who prayed it ceased to exist. The shadow prays perfectly. I can feel the depth of it, the purity of it, the completeness of it. This is prayer as it should be, undistracted, undiluted, absolute. Other clergy come to pray beside the shadow. They kneel next to it. They try to match its devotion. But human prayer is imperfect, distracted, incomplete. The shadow's prayer is archived perfection, preserved purity, filed absoluteness. Some clergy become obsessed. They spend hours beside the shadow, trying to achieve its level of devotion. They neglect food, sleep, duties. They pray and pray, seeking to match the archived prayer, to equal the preserved devotion, to file themselves as completely in faith as the shadow is filed. 3 have lost themselves. 3 clergy who prayed too long beside the shadow, who tried too hard to match its archived perfection. They kneel now in perpetual prayer, having joined the shadow in its filed devotion, having become part of its preserved faith, having archived themselves in prayer that never ends. They still live, technically. Their bodies are maintained. We feed them, wash them, care for them. But they are not present. They are archived in prayer. They are preserved in devotion. They are filed in faith that has consumed everything else they were. I fear for our chapel. The shadow's prayer is too perfect. Its archived devotion is too pure. Its filed faith is too absolute. It draws people into its preservation. It files them into its devotion. It archives them in prayer from which they cannot return. We have closed the chapel. We have forbidden access to the praying shadow. But it prays still, behind locked doors, in sealed darkness. The archived prayer continues. The preserved devotion persists. The filed faith maintains itself, waiting for others to join it, to kneel beside it, to be drawn into its perfect, terrible, all-consuming prayer that never ends, that cannot end, that will continue forever, archived in shadow, preserved in darkness, filed in the chapel where 500 years ago a hermit prayed so perfectly that his prayer survived him, and now seeks others to join it in eternal devotion. Deacon Samuel Worship Dorset, 7th February 1745. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 603L. Classification Librarian's account. Date of statement 18th April 1603. Location Cambridge. Author Master Geoffrey Bookman, University. Librarian Account 1 Geoffrey Bookman. Do account for the manuscript that writes itself. In our library's restricted collection sits a manuscript that never stops being written. The pages fill themselves with text. New words appear daily. The manuscript grows thicker as it archives itself, preserves itself, files itself into ever-expanding volume. The manuscript began as normal book, a chronicle of local history, written 300 years ago by a monk named Brother Edmund. He recorded births, deaths, marriages, events of his time. But Brother Edmund died before finishing his chronicle. He passed while writing, his pen falling from his hand mid-sentence. The sentence remained incomplete, and so it came to pass that the next morning the sentence was finished. New words had appeared. The chronicle would continue without its chronicler, for the need to preserve exceeds the life of the preserver. The manuscript continues writing itself. It records everything that happens in Cambridge, every birth, every death, every significant event. It files away daily life, preserves local history, archives the present as it becomes past. I have watched words appear. The pen does not move. No hand writes them. The words simply manifest on the page, one letter at a time, forming sentences, filling pages, expanding the chronicle. The manuscript knows things it should not know. It records private conversations. It describes events in locked rooms. It files away secrets, preserves confessions, archives everything that occurs in Cambridge, whether witnessed or hidden. How do you know these things? I asked the manuscript once, speaking aloud to empty page. Words appeared in response. I am preservation. I am filing. I am archive. I exist to record, to maintain, to preserve all that occurs. I see all because seeing is necessary for filing. I know all because knowing is necessary for preservation. I archive all because archiving is my purpose, my function, my entire existence. Other scholars fear the manuscript. They know it records their secrets, files their private moments, preserves their hidden actions. Nothing is private from the self-writing chronicle. Nothing escapes its preservation. Some have tried to destroy it. They burned pages, but the pages regrew overnight. Text restored perfectly. They tore out sections, but new pages appeared, blank and ready to be filled. They locked the manuscript away, but it continued writing, recording even its own imprisonment. The manuscript cannot be stopped. It cannot be destroyed. It exists to archive, and it will archive everything, preserving Cambridge's complete history, whether Cambridge wishes to be preserved or not. But there is a darker problem. The manuscript archives deaths in advance. 3 days before someone passes, their death appears in the chronicle. On this date, name shall depart this world, it writes, filing away endings before they occur, preserving deaths before they happen. The manuscript archived my own death last week. On the 21st day of April, Geoffrey Bookman shall pass from this world, having served the archives faithfully. 3 days from now, the manuscript has filed my ending. It has preserved my death in advance. It has archived what has not yet occurred, but inevitably will. Can I prevent it? Can I escape preservation, or am I filed so completely that the chronicle's recording of my death makes my death certain, makes my preservation inevitable? I do not know, but I know the manuscript will record my passing. It will file my ending. It will preserve my death as it has preserved everything else, and it will continue writing, continue recording, continue archiving Cambridge long after I am gone, maintaining its eternal chronicle that no death can stop, that no ending can prevent, that no passage of time can conclude. The self-writing manuscript is eternal archivist, perfect preserver, complete filer, and we are all being recorded, all being preserved, all being filed away in its pages whether we consent or not, whether we wish it or not, whether we live or pass. The chronicle continues. The preservation persists. The archive grows. Master Geoffrey Bookman, University Librarian, Cambridge, 18th April, 1603, end of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file. Noah 16666C. Classification. Curate's notes. Date of statement. 23rd November 1666. Location. Essex. Author. Curate Daniel Faithwell. Notes. I, Curate Daniel Faithwell. Do note the confessional booth that remembers every sin. Our church confessional is ancient, carved oak, dark with age, worn smooth by centuries of penitence. It has heard confessions for 500 years. But the confessional does more than hear. It remembers. It archives every sin confessed within it. It preserves every transgression spoken in its darkness. It files away 500 years of human wrongdoing. I discovered this during confession duty. A woman confessed to stealing bread. Simple sin. Simple absolution. But as I spoke the words of forgiveness, I heard other voices, faint voices, whispered voices, all confessing the same sin. Hundreds of voices over centuries, all having confessed to stealing, all archived in the confessional's wood, all preserved in its structure. The confessional had filed every confession. Every sin spoken within it was preserved, maintained, archived in the oak that had absorbed 500 years of wrongdoing. I heard murders confessed, betrayals, lies, cruelties, all preserved in the confessional, all filed in its wood, all archived in its darkness. 500 years of sin, stored in the booth where I sat. "Do you preserve all confessions?" I asked the empty air. The wood creaked. A voice emerged, not from any person but from the confessional itself. "I am vessel of confession. I hold all sins. I preserve all wrongdoing. I archive all transgression. This is my purpose. This is why I was carved from sacred oak, blessed and consecrated. To hold sin, to file sin, to preserve sin, so souls can be freed from it." "But if you hold the sins, are they truly forgiven?" "Yes," the confessional said. "The souls are freed, but the sins must be preserved. They cannot simply disappear. They must be filed somewhere. They must be maintained. They must be archived. I am that archive. I am the preservation of human wrongdoing. I am the filing system for sin." Other priests report similar experiences. All confessionals preserve confessions. All archive sins spoken within them. All file away wrongdoing in their wood, their stone, their structure. But our confessional is oldest. It has preserved the most. It is filled with 500 years of archived sin, and the confessional is deteriorating. The wood is cracking. The structure is weakening. The ancient booth cannot hold much longer. What happens when it fails? What happens when 500 years of preserved sin is released? Will the archived wrongdoing flood out? Will the filed transgression escape preservation? I do not know, but I know we must stop using the confessional. We must seal it. We must prevent more sin from being filed within it. But people continue confessing. They need to confess. They need forgiveness. They need their sins to be filed away, to be preserved outside themselves, to be archived where they cannot hurt anymore. So the confessional continues receiving, continues preserving, continues filing, adding daily to its already overwhelming archive of sin, storing more wrongdoing in structure already cracking under weight of centuries of preserved transgression. We are building new confessional, stronger wood, better construction, capacity for centuries more preservation, because sin must be filed, wrongdoing must be preserved, transgression must be archived, and if old confessional fails, new one must be ready to continue the preservation, to maintain the filing, to archive the endless stream of human sin that needs somewhere to be stored, somewhere to be held, somewhere to be preserved outside the souls that committed it. The old confessional creaks. The archived sins press against cracking wood. 500 years of preserved wrongdoing strain to escape. And I pray the structure holds. Pray the preservation continues. Pray the archive maintains itself until new confessional is ready to receive the filing, to accept the preservation, to archive the sins that humans cannot stop committing and cannot bear to hold within themselves. Curate Daniel Faithwell, Essex, 23rd November, 1666. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1532W. Classification Warden's Statement. Date of statement 9th July 1532. Location Cumbria. Author Thomas Watchman, Church Warden. Statement 1 Thomas Watchman, do state what lives in the church tower. Our church tower is tall, stone, ancient, 40 feet high, built to house bells. But something else lives there now, something that has been archived in the height, preserved in the elevation, filed in the vertical space between earth and sky. I climb the tower weekly to wind the clock. 120 steps, spiraling upward through darkness. The climb is always cold, always silent, always wrong. Last week, I heard breathing, not my own breathing, other breathing. Something in the tower was breathing, drawing air in rhythm with my climbing, matching my pace, following me up the spiral stairs. I stopped. The breathing stopped. I climbed. The breathing resumed. "Who is there?" I called. "I am the archived," came the response. Voice echoing in the tower shaft, coming from above and below simultaneously. "I am the one preserved in height. I fell from this tower 300 years ago. My body struck the ground, but my fall is still occurring. I am archived in the falling, preserved in the descent, filed in the moment between height and impact." "You fell 300 years ago but are still falling." "Yes," the voice said. "The tower preserved my fall. It archived the moment of falling. It filed me in the space of descent. I fall forever, never reaching ground, never completing my fall, always in the terrible moment between height and ending." I continued climbing. I needed to reach the clock, but the breathing followed. The falling man, archived in his descent, preserved in the tower shaft, followed me upward. At the top, I saw him, transparent figure, positioned as though falling, arms outstretched, face frozen in terror. He hung in the air, not rising or descending, preserved in the moment of his fall. "Can I help you?" I asked. "No," he said. "I am too completely archived. I am filed in the fall. The preservation is perfect. I cannot complete my descent. I cannot reach the ground. I cannot end. I fall forever in this tower, preserved in the moment of my death, archived in the space where I ceased to live, but have not yet ceased to be." Other figures appeared, all falling, all archived in descent, all preserved in the moment between height and ground. The tower collected them, everyone who fell from it over the centuries, all filed in their falling, all maintained in their descent, all archived in the terrible space of dropping. They fall in formation, oldest at top, having been falling longest, newest at bottom, only decades into their eternal descent, all preserved in the tower, all filed in its height, all archived in vertical space that will not release them, that will not let them complete their falls, that maintains them in endless dropping. I wind the clock quickly now. I do not linger in the tower. I do not look at the falling ones, preserved in their terror, archived in their descent, filed in the tower that will not let them reach the ground, will not let them end, will not let them complete the fall that has lasted centuries and will last forever. The tower stands, the archived ones fall, the preservation continues. And I wonder what would happen if the tower collapsed. Would the falling ones finally reach ground? Would they complete their descent? Or would they simply transfer to another tower, another height, another vertical space where they could continue their eternal falling, their permanent preservation, their endless archived descent? Thomas Watchman, Church Warden, Cumbria, 9th July, 1532. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file. NOA. 1709p. Classification. Parsons Record. Date of statement. 5th October, 1709. Location, Lincolnshire. Author, Parson Gregory Chapel, Record Waupois, Parson Gregory Chapel. Do record the baptismal font that remembers every child. Our baptismal font is stone, carved 1200 years ago. It has baptized thousands of children. Every infant born in this parish for 12 centuries has been blessed in this font. But the font does more than bless. It remembers. It archives every child baptized in its water. It preserves every name spoken over it. It files away 1200 years of new life, new souls, new beginnings. I discovered this during a baptism. I held infant over the font, spoke the blessing. As I poured water, I heard voices, children's voices, thousands of them, all saying the same words. I am baptized. I am archived. I am preserved. The font contains them all. Every baptized child from 12 centuries. Not their bodies, but their infant selves, their beginning moments, their first blessings, all filed in the font's water, all preserved in its stone, all archived in the sacred space where they were dedicated. Why do you preserve them? I asked the font. The water rippled though no wind blew. A voice emerged, ancient and patient. I am beginning. I am first blessing. I archive the start of each life. I preserve the moment of dedication. I file the instant when soul enters community. This is my purpose. This is sacred preservation. This is holy filing. I can hear them in the font. Thousands of infant voices, all preserved at their baptism, all filed at their beginning, all archived at the moment when they were named, blessed, dedicated. But here is the troubling part. The font's archived children are growing, not physically, but temporally. The preserved infants age within their preservation. The filed babies become archived children, then archived adults, then archived elderly, all within the font, all still connected to their baptismal moment, but experiencing full lives within the preservation. An infant baptized yesterday is already archived as child. An infant baptized last year is archived as youth. An infant baptized decades ago is archived as adult. The font accelerates their preservation, files their entire lives in compressed time, archives their complete existence. Do they live within you? I asked. They live their archived lives, the font said. They experience their preserved existence. They grow, learn, love, suffer, age, all within the filing. They live complete lives in the water that bless them. They are preserved from birth to ending, all contained in the moment of their baptism. This means the font contains not just infants, but entire lives. Thousands of complete human existences, all filed in the stone, all preserved in the water, all archived in the sacred space of baptism. I baptize children differently now. I understand I am not just blessing them. I am filing them. I am creating their archived existence. I am preserving their complete lives in the font that will hold them from this moment until their ending and beyond. The font grows heavier. The weight of 1200 years of preserved lives. The mass of thousands of archived existences. The burden of complete human experiences filed in stone and water. Can the font hold more? Can it continue filing? Can it preserve more lives, more beginnings, more blessed infants? I do not know, but I know it tries. Each baptism adds another life to its archive. Each blessing files another existence. Each dedication preserves another soul in the font that has collected them for 12 centuries and will continue collecting as long as children are born, As long as blessings are spoken, as long as water pours over infant heads in sacred moment, when life begins and is immediately, simultaneously, completely archived. Parson Gregory Chapel, Lincolnshire, 5th October 1709, end of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file, Noe 1585b, classification, Bishop's testimony, date of statement, 12th March 1585, location, Winchester, author, Bishop Thomas Sanctuary testimony. Bishop Thomas Sanctuary, do testify about the cathedral crypt that leads deeper than it should. Winchester Cathedral has extensive crypts, burial chambers, storage vaults, passages beneath the main structure. But one passage goes deeper than the others. Deeper than should be possible, deeper than geology permits. The deep passage was sealed centuries ago. Warning carved in Latin over the entrance. Descendere est archivari, qui intrat non redit. To descend is to be archived. Who enters does not return. Last month, workmen opened the passage accidentally while repairing foundations. Beyond the sealed entrance, stairs descended into darkness. Very old stairs, very steep stairs, stairs going down much farther than the cathedral's depth should allow. I ordered the passage sealed again, but 3 priests asked permission to explore. We must know what lies below, they said. Knowledge is sacred duty. I permitted them. They descended with torches and rope. They went down the stairs, calling back to us as they descended. Their voices echoed strangely, becoming distorted, becoming archived. They descended for hours. We heard them calling up, reporting what they saw. More stairs, more darkness. Occasional chambers filled with artifacts from ages past. The deeper they went, the older the artifacts. Roman items, Celtic items, items from before human record. Then their voices changed. They spoke in Latin, but ancient Latin, pronunciation from centuries past. They spoke as though they had been archived, as though the depth had preserved them in earlier time, filed them in past eras. Their final message came from extreme depth. We have reached the archive, the true archive, the place where everything descends, everything that is preserved, everything that is filed. We see it all here, everything that ever was, everything that ever will be, all archived in the depth beneath the cathedral. Then silence. They did not return. We waited 3 days. The passage remained empty. I descended part way myself. I went down the stairs, 50 feet, 100 feet. The air grew cold. The darkness grew thick, and I heard voices, thousands of voices. All the voices of everyone who had descended this passage over thousands of years, all archived in the depth, all preserved in the darkness below. I retreated. I sealed the passage with brick and mortar. I consecrated the seal. I forbade anyone from opening it again. But I know what lies below. The deep archive, the place where all descending things are preserved. The filing system beneath the world. Everything that falls, that descends, that goes down, eventually reaches that place. Everything is archived there. Everything is preserved in the depth that has no bottom, that continues forever downward, that files all things in endless descent. The 3 priests are there now, archived in the deep, preserved in the descent, filed in the infinite downward passage. They joined everything else that has descended over all of human history. They are part of the archive now, part of the filing, part of the preservation that collects all falling things and maintains them in eternal descent. The passage remains sealed, but I hear it sometimes. The sound of descending, the sound of things being archived, the sound of the deep filing system beneath the cathedral, beneath the city, beneath the world, collecting everything that falls, preserving everything that descends, maintaining everything in the archive that has no bottom, and never releases what it files. Bishop Thomas Sanctuary, Winchester, 12th March, 1585, end of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file, N-Noe Wulsing 51F classification, Friar's Notes. Date of statement, 29th August, 1651. Location, Kent. Author, Friar Michael Wanderer, Franciscan Order Notes. Why, Friar Michael Wanderer? Do note the road that remembers every traveller. The Pilgrim's Road from London to Canterbury is ancient. Thousands have walked it. Pilgrims seeking blessing, travellers seeking trade, people seeking new lives. But the road remembers them all. Every footstep that ever touched its surface is archived in its stones, preserved in its dirt, filed in its length. I walk this road often. I am travelling friar, bringing blessing to villages along the way. But lately, I do not walk alone. I walk with the archived travellers, the preserved pilgrims, the filed footsteps of everyone who ever walked this road. They appear at twilight, transparent figures, walking the same road I walk. Some wear clothing from my time, some wear clothing from centuries past, all walking, all preserved in their journey, all archived in the road they travelled. I spoke to one, old pilgrim, dressed in clothing from 200 years ago. Why do you walk still? I asked. I died on this road, he said. I walked from London seeking Canterbury. I took fever. I passed before reaching the shrine. But my journey was so important to me, my pilgrimage so central to my life, that the road preserved it. The road archived my walking. The road filed my journey. And now I walk forever, archived in my pilgrimage, preserved in my travelling, maintained in journey that will never reach its end. More figures appeared, hundreds of them, all walking toward Canterbury, all archived in their journeys, all preserved in their pilgrimages, all filed in the road that remembered them. Does the road archive everyone? I asked. Everyone whose journey mattered, the pilgrim said. Everyone who walked with purpose, with intention, with dedication. The road preserves significant journeys. It files meaningful travel. It archives purposeful walking. I realized I was surrounded by centuries of archived travelers, all walking this road, all preserved in their journeys, all filed in purposeful pilgrimage, but some walked in the opposite direction, away from Canterbury, toward London. Who are those? I asked. Those who failed, the pilgrim said. Those who turned back. Those who abandoned their pilgrimage. The road preserves them too. It archives failure alongside success. It files abandonment alongside completion. It preserves all journeys, completed or not. The road was full. Hundreds of archived travellers, thousands, perhaps tens of thousands, all walking, all preserved, all filed in the ancient road that remembered every significant journey ever walked upon it. I am being archived too. I feel it. Each time I walk this road, the road preserves part of my journey. It files my footsteps. It archives my travelling. Someday, when I pass, I will join the transparent figures. I will walk this road forever, preserved in my journey, filed in my purpose, archived in the travelling that defined my life? Is this immortality, or is it imprisonment? To walk forever the road you walked in life, preserved in your purpose, filed in your journey, never reaching your destination because destinations cannot be archived. Only the travelling can be preserved. Only the journeying can be filed. The road stretches before me, behind me, crowded with archived travellers, all walking, all preserved, all filed in the road that remembers them, that maintains them, that archives them in eternal journey toward destinations they will never reach, purposes they will never fulfill, pilgrimages that will never end. Friar Michael Wanderer, Franciscan Order, Kent, 29th August, 1651. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file, NOA 11723R classification. Rector's Journal. Date of statement, 16th May, 1723. Location, Devon. Author, Reverend Samuel Graves. Journal Entry 1, Reverend Samuel Graves. Do record the sermon that preaches itself. Every Sunday I prepare sermon. I write, practice, refine. Then I ascend the pulpit to preach to my congregation. But lately, the pulpit preaches itself. I open my mouth to speak, and different words emerge. Not my words, archived words, preserved sermons, filed preaching from every minister who ever spoke from this pulpit across 300 years. The first time, I was terrified. I intended to preach about charity, but I heard myself speaking about judgment, in language from 2 centuries past, in preaching style I had never used. The archived sermon spoke itself through me. My congregation noticed nothing unusual. They heard good sermon, traditional sermon, properly structured sermon. They did not realize it was not my sermon but archived sermon, preserved preaching, filed homily from minister long dead. The pulpit has collected 300 years of sermons. Every word spoken from it has been archived in its wood, preserved in its structure, filed in its elevated space. And now those archived sermons want to be preached again. They use my voice, my mouth, my body to repeat themselves, to preserve themselves, to maintain themselves through new speaking. I cannot control it. I prepare sermon on grace. The pulpit preaches archived sermon on sin. I intend to discuss love. The pulpit delivers preserved sermon on fear. The archived sermons override my intentions, using me as voice for their preservation, as mouth for their continued filing. Other ministers report similar experiences. Pulpits everywhere archive sermons. Preserved preaching accumulates in the wood, in the stone, in the elevated spaces where ministers stand. And the archived sermons seek to perpetuate themselves, to be spoken again and again, to file themselves into new generations through ministers who become mere vessels for preserved preaching. I spoke to elderly priest about this. It has always been so, he said. We do not preach, we are preached through. The pulpit preserves all sermons. It files all preaching. It archives all words spoken in sacred space. And it uses us to maintain the archive, to keep the preserved sermons alive, to ensure filed preaching continues generation after generation. But I want to preach my own sermons, I said. Your sermons will be archived too, he said, added to the collection, preserved in the pulpit, filed for future ministers to speak. You do not lose your sermons. They are preserved. But you must also speak the archived sermons. You must maintain the filing. You must preserve what was preached before you. I have accepted this. Each Sunday, I prepare sermon knowing it may not be spoken, knowing the pulpit may override me with archive preaching, knowing I am vessel for preservation rather than originator of preaching. But my sermons are being filed. I feel the pulpit absorbing them, preserving them, archiving them for future ministers who will speak my words long after I'm gone, who will preach my sermons without knowing they are mine, who will be vessels for my archive preaching as I am vessel for archive preaching of ministers from centuries past. This is continuity. This is preservation. This is sacred filing. The pulpit maintains tradition by archiving everything spoken from it, by preserving all preaching, by filing sermons so completely that they can be resurrected, re-spoken, re-preached by future ministers who become channels for archived wisdom, vessels for preserved teaching, mouths for filed preaching that spans centuries. I am archive and archived both. I speak preserved sermons while my sermons are being preserved. I am filing system while being filed. I am preservation while being preserved. The pulpit uses me as it will use future ministers, maintaining its archive, continuing its filing, preserving its collection of 300 years of sermons that will be preached forever, generation after generation, minister after minister, all speaking archived words, all preserving filed preaching, all maintaining the sacred collection that grows with each sermon while remaining always the same, always traditional, always archived. Reverend Samuel Graves, Devon, 16th May, 1723. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file, NOE 1598S classification. Sacristan's report. Date of statement, 3rd December, 1598. Location, Cornwall. Author, Brother Paul. Sacristan, Report 1. Brother Paul, Sacristan of St. Piran's Monastery. Do report the altar that bleeds memories. Our monastery altar is granite, carved from single block of Cornish stone. 500 years old. Thousands of masses celebrated upon it. Countless consecrations performed at it. But the altar bleeds, not blood, memories. The stone weeps preserved experiences, archived moments, filed lives of everyone who ever worshipped at it. I discovered this during morning preparation. I was cleaning the altar when I touched dark stain on the stone. The moment I touched it, I saw vision, memory, not my memory, but someone else's memory, preserved in the stone. I saw a monk from centuries past. I saw his life, his childhood, his calling, his years of service. I experienced his entire existence in single touch. His life was archived in the altar, preserved in the stone, filed in the granite. I touched another stain, another memory, another life, another complete human existence preserved in the altar stone. The altar collects them. Everyone who prays at it regularly, everyone who serves at it faithfully, everyone who worships at it devotedly. The altar archives them. It preserves their lives. It files their experiences in its stone. I can touch the altar anywhere and receive memories. 500 years of preserved lives. Thousands of archived existences. Countless filed experiences. The altar is massive archive of human life, all stored in stone, all preserved in granite, all maintained in the sacred space where worship occurs. Why do you collect lives? I asked the altar. The stone hummed. I felt response rather than heard it. I am witness. I am preserver. I am archive. I watch all who worship here. I remember all who serve here. I maintain all who dedicate themselves here. This is my purpose. This is sacred preservation. This is holy filing. Other monks have touched the altar. All receive memories. All experience archived lives. Some are overwhelmed by the centuries of preserved experience. Some touch the altar for hours, living thousands of lives in sequence, experiencing everyone who ever worshipped here. Brother Thomas has lost himself in the altar's memories. He touches it constantly, living archived lives, experiencing preserved existences. He has forgotten his own life, his own identity submerged beneath thousands of archived lives he has accessed through the altar stone. We tried to pull him away, but he insists on touching the altar, on accessing the memories, on experiencing the preserved lives. I want to know them all, he says. I want to live all archived lives. I want to experience everything preserved in the stone. He is being archived himself. As he touches the altar, absorbing memories, the altar is absorbing him. His life is being filed into the stone. His experiences are being preserved in the granite. He is becoming part of the altar's archive, adding his existence to the thousands already stored there. Soon, Brother Thomas will be completely archived. His life will be fully preserved in the stone, and future monks will touch the altar and receive his memories, will experience his life, will live his archived existence as he has lived the archived existences of those who came before. This is the altar's function: to witness worship, to preserve worshippers, to archive the faithful, to maintain complete record of everyone who ever dedicated themselves at this sacred space. We continue using the altar. We have no choice. It is consecrated space, sacred stone, holy place. But we know it is also archive. We know it preserves us. We know that as we worship, we are being filed into the stone. Our lives are being archived in the granite. Our existences are being preserved for future generations to access, to experience, to live through, touching the altar that bleeds memories. Brother Paul, Sacristan, Cornwall, 3rd December, 1598. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file. NOA 1677 M. Classification. Monk's Confession. Date of statement. 21st September 1677. Location. Durham. Author Brother Jerome. Benedictine Order Confession. Why, Brother Jerome? Do confess what I found in the manuscript I was copying. My work is manuscript illumination. I copy sacred texts, add decorative letters, create beautiful pages that will preserve God's word. Simple work, holy work. Last month, I was assigned ancient gospel to copy. Very old, very precious, written perhaps 800 years ago. The manuscript was deteriorating. My task was to create new copy before original crumbled entirely. I began copying carefully, word by word, letter by letter, preserving exact text, exact layout, exact everything. But as I copied, I heard voices, whispered voices, coming from the manuscript itself. The voices of previous scribes who had copied this text over centuries, all archived in the manuscript, all preserved in its pages, all filed in the text they had copied. We are here, they whispered. We are preserved in our copying. We are archived in the text. We are filed in the words we wrote. We live in the manuscript we created. I tried to ignore them. I continued copying. But the voices grew louder. I heard not just voices, but thoughts, memories, lives of the scribes who had copied this text across 800 years. I experienced Brother Augustine, who copied this manuscript 600 years ago. I lived his life, felt his devotion, knew his thoughts. He was archived in his copying. His life was preserved in the text he created. I experienced Brother Matthew, who copied this manuscript 400 years ago. I experienced Brother Francis, who copied 200 years ago. All archived in their copying, all preserved in their work, all filed in the manuscript they had created. Then I understood. Copying is not just preserving the text. Copying is preserving the copyist. Every scribe who copies sacred text archives himself in the copying. His life is filed in the words he writes. His existence is preserved in the manuscript he creates. I am being archived too. As I copy, I am filing myself into the manuscript. My life is being preserved in the text. My existence is being maintained in the words I write. When I finish this copy, I will be part of it. Future scribes who copy my copy will experience my life. They will hear my voice. They will know my thoughts. I will be archived in the manuscript forever, preserved in the text, filed in the words that I am writing now. This is terrifying and beautiful both. Terrifying because I am losing myself to the manuscript, being archived so completely that I am becoming text rather than person. Beautiful because I will be preserved forever, filed eternally, archived in sacred words that will exist long after my flesh has failed. The manuscript glows as I copy. I see the archived scribes within it. Hundreds of them, all preserved in the text, all filed in the words, all maintained in the sacred manuscript that has collected them across 8 centuries. I will join them. I will be archived with them. I will be preserved in the text I am copying, and future scribes will copy my copy, and they will hear my voice, and they will be archived in their turn. And the manuscript will continue growing, collecting scribes, preserving copyists, filing everyone who ever copies it into its eternal archive of sacred text and archive souls. This confession may be the last thing I write as myself. After I finish copying the manuscript, I will be text. I will be archive. I will be preserved words rather than living person. I will exist in the manuscript, filed forever, archived eternally, maintained in sacred text that preserves not just God's word, but every scribe who ever copied God's word. Brother Jerome, Benedictine Order, Durham, 21st September, 1677, end of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file, Enoe, 1704, a classification, Abbot's Testament. Date of statement, 7th November, 1704. Location, Yorkshire. Author, Abbot William Devotion, Testament 1, Abbot William Devotion. Do testify about the chapel bell that rings for those about to pass. Our monastery chapel has small bell in its steeple. Ancient bell, simple bell, rung only for special occasions. But the bell rings by itself sometimes, not at regular times, not according to any schedule. It rings when someone is about to pass from this world. The bell knows. 3 days before someone's ending, the bell rings. Single toll, clear and final. The archived bell announcing approaching preservation. The filing bell marking imminent archiving. First time I heard it ring unexpectedly, I thought it malfunctioned. But 3 days later, Brother Thomas passed peacefully in his sleep. The bell had known. The bell had announced his approaching filing. The bell rang again last month. Single toll at midnight. 3 days later, Sister Agnes at nearby convent passed. The bell had known. The bell had filed her ending before it occurred. The bell is archive of endings. It preserves knowledge of approaching passings. It files deaths before they happen. It maintains list of who will soon join the archived, who will soon be preserved, who will soon be filed into the great collection of those who have left this world. How do you know? I asked the bell. It rang once in response, and I understood. The bell can see the archive preparing space. It can see preservation selecting souls. It can see filing process beginning 3 days before actual ending. The bell witnesses the preparation, the readying, the opening of archive to receive new entry. We have learned to trust the bell. When it rings unexpectedly, we prepare. We gather. We pray for whoever will pass in 3 days. We ease their transition from living to archived, from present to preserved, from current to filed. The bell rang yesterday. Single toll. Someone will pass in 3 days. Someone in our monastery or nearby will join the archived. The bell has announced it. The preservation has begun. I believe it is me. I feel it. The preparation, the readying, the archive opening to receive me. In 3 days I will pass. I will be archived. I will be filed into the great preservation that maintains all who have left this world. I am not afraid. I have heard the bell ring for others. I have seen peaceful transitions. The archive is not cruel. The filing is not painful. The preservation is gentle, complete, eternal. The bell will ring again for others after I am archived. It will continue its work, announcing endings, marking passings, filing approaching deaths, maintaining its role as witness to the archive's preparation, as herald of the preservation's readiness, as marker of the filing's commencement. This is my final testament, written with 3 days remaining, written as I await my filing, my preservation, my archiving. The bell has rung for me. The archive prepares space. The preservation readies itself. And I prepare my soul for the transition from living document to archived document, from current text to preserved text, from present being to filed being. The bell knows. The bell always knows. And in 3 days the bell will toll again, not announcing my approaching passage, but marking my completion of passage, my successful filing, my perfect preservation. The bell will ring, and I will be archived. Abbot William Devotion, Yorkshire, 7th November, 1704, end of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file, Noe Sun 1619C. Classification, Chorister's account. Date of statement, 4th August, 1619. Location, Canterbury. Author, William Songwell. Chorister account Y, William Songwell, Cathedral Chorister. Do account for the hymn that sings itself. Every evening at Vespers, we sing hymn number 47. Ancient hymn. Beautiful melody. Traditional words. We have sung it for 300 years. But lately, the hymn sings itself. We open our mouths, and different voices emerge. Not our voices. Archived voices. Preserved choristers from centuries past, singing through us. The first time, I was terrified. I intended to sing tenor line, but my mouth produced soprano. High, pure, belonging to boy whose voice broke 2 centuries ago. His voice was archived in the hymn, preserved in the melody, filed in the music we sing. Now all the archived voices sing, hundreds of them. All the choristers who ever sang this hymn over 3 centuries. All preserved in the music, all filed in the melody, all singing through us, using our mouths our breath, our living flesh to continue their song. The choir master says it is honor. We are vessels for preserved beauty, he says. We maintain musical archive. We file sacred sound across generations. But I do not feel honored. I feel erased. My voice is gone, replaced by archived voices. I open my mouth, and centuries of dead singers emerge. I am not singing. I am being sung through. Other choristers accept it. They embrace being vessels. Our voices will be preserved too, they say. We will be archived in the hymn. Future choristers will sing our voices. Is this immortality? To be filed in music, to be preserved in song, to be archived as voice that future singers will produce. I do not want it. I want my own voice. But the hymn has taken it. The archived music has filed me. The preserved song has claimed my mouth for its continuation. Every evening at Vespers I sing hymn 47, or rather, the hymn sings itself through me. And I feel myself being archived, being preserved, being filed into the music that will use my voice long after I am gone. William Songwell, Chorister Canterbury, 4th August, 1619, end of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file, NOA 1573P, classification, Pilgrim's Testimony, date of statement, 19th October, 1573, location, Durham, author, Margaret Traveller, Pilgrim, testimony 1, Margaret Traveller. Do testify about the shrine that grants wishes to those who are filed. St. Cuthbert's Shrine in Durham Cathedral is famous for miracles. Pilgrims come seeking healing, seeking blessing, seeking holy favour. The shrine does grant wishes, but there is cost. Payment is filing. You must be archived in the shrine. You must allow yourself to be preserved in the sacred space. You must consent to being filed forever in the stone where the saint rests. I did not know this when I came. I was desperate. My daughter was ill unto death. I prayed at the shrine. I begged St. Cuthbert for healing. I will give anything, I said, anything to save her. The shrine accepted. My daughter recovered. Within 1 day, her fever broke. Within 3 days, she was healthy. The shrine had granted my wish. But I was filed. I felt it happen. Part of me was archived in the shrine. My essence, my being, myself, was preserved in the stone where I had prayed. Now I am divided. Part of me walks in the living world. Part of me remains at the shrine, filed forever, preserved in prayer position, archived at the moment of my desperate plea. I can feel my archived self, always praying, always begging, always frozen in that moment of desperation. The shrine has preserved my wish so completely that I am still wishing it, still praying it, still living that moment forever in the stone. Other pilgrims are there too, all who received wishes, all who paid with filing, all archived in the shrine, preserved in their prayer moments, filed in their desperate pleas. The shrine is full of us, hundreds of archived pilgrims, all preserved in our wish moments, all filed in our prayer positions, all still praying, still wishing, still frozen in the instant when we received what we sought. Was my daughter's life worth this? Worth being permanently archived? Worth having part of myself filed forever in stone? I do not know, but I know I cannot undo it. I am filed. The shrine has archived me. Part of me will pray there forever, preserved in that moment, maintained in that desperation, filed in that wish that was granted at cost of being preserved forever. Margaret Traveller, Pilgrim, Durham, 19th October, 1573. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file Noe 1642V. Classification Verger's Notes. Date of statement 13th May 1642. Location Norfolk. Author Thomas Keeman, Church. Verger Notes. Why Thomas Keeman, Church Verger? Do note the door that leads to archived services. Our church has 20 doors. 19 lead to expected places: vestry, tower, crypts, outside. But the 20th door, behind the altar, leads to archived services. Open the door during regular time. You see storage room, ordinary space, nothing unusual. But open it during Mass, during service, during prayer, and it leads elsewhere, to services from the past, to archived worship, to preserved Masses from centuries ago. I opened it accidentally during communion. Instead of storage room, I saw chapel, full chapel, congregation in medieval dress, priests speaking Latin Mass according to rites not used for 100 years. I stepped through. Nobody noticed me. I was observer in archive service, visitor to preserved worship, witness to filed Mass that occurred centuries ago, but still continues in the space behind the door. The service proceeded normally. Prayers, hymns, communion, everything proper, everything preserved perfectly, everything archived exactly as it occurred originally. When service ended, congregation filed out through different door. The chapel emptied. I returned to my church through the 20th door. I have opened the door during other services. Each time, different archived worship, sometimes from 50 years ago, sometimes from 200 years ago, all preserved behind the door, all filed in the space that connects to archived time. The door is archive of worship. It preserves every service. It files every Mass. It maintains complete collection of religious observance from the church's entire history. Other vergers know about the door. Do not speak of it, they tell me. The archive must remain secret. Not everyone should access preserved services. But why? Why keep archived worship hidden? Why prevent people from witnessing preserved devotion? Because they want to join it, the elder verger said. They want to be archived in past services. They want to be filed in preserved Masses. They want to remain in the archived worship forever. I understand now. The archived services are perfect, pure, uncorrupted by modern concerns. They are worship as it should be, and people want that, want to be part of that perfection, want to be filed in that purity. But if they join archive services, they do not return. They become part of the preservation. They are filed in the past worship. They are archived in services that occurred centuries ago. The door remains, behind the altar, leading to archive services, preserving worship, filing devotion, maintaining complete record of religious observance that anyone can access, but from which some never return. Thomas Keeman, Church Verger, Norfolk, 13th May 1642. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file Noah Waxy 98M classification, Monk's record. Date of statement 28th February 1698. Location Somerset. Author Brother Martin, Scribe Monk. Record Y. Brother Martin. Do record the ink that preserves thoughts. Our monastery scriptorium uses special ink. Recipe handed down for centuries. Made with oak galls, iron salts and water from sacred spring. But the ink does more than write. It preserves thoughts. Whatever you think while writing becomes filed in the ink. preserved in the text, archived in the words. I discovered this while copying Psalms. I thought about my mother while writing. When I read the finished text, my mother's face appeared in my mind, not memory of her, her actual face, preserved in the ink, filed in the psalm I had copied. The ink archives thoughts. Every thought occurring during writing is preserved in the text. Every emotion felt while scribing is filed in the words. The ink creates complete record not just of what is written, but of what is thought while writing. This means every manuscript in our library contains archived thoughts. Every copied text preserves the scribe's mind. Every written word files mental state of the writer. I read Brother Augustine's copy of Matthew's Gospel. As I read, I experienced his thoughts, his devotion, his doubts, his questions, all preserved in the ink, all filed in the text, all archived in the manuscript. But there is danger. Some scribes had troubled thoughts. Brother Thomas copied while angry. His anger is preserved in every word he wrote. Anyone reading his manuscripts feels that anger, experiences that rage, receives that filed emotion. Brother Stephen copied while despairing. His despair is preserved in his texts. Reading his work fills readers with hopelessness, with archived desperation, with filed grief. The scriptorium now requires mental discipline. We must think properly while writing. We must maintain correct thoughts, because our thoughts will be preserved, will be filed, will be archived for future readers to experience. But can we control thoughts completely? Can we maintain perfect mental state throughout hours of copying? I doubt it. Small doubts, small angers, small fears creep in, and all are archived, all preserved, all filed in the ink that captures not just words but minds. Our library is full of archived minds. Every manuscript contains preserved thoughts. Every text files mental states. Every word archives consciousness of the scribe who wrote it. Future readers will experience us completely, our words and our minds, our texts and our thoughts, our writing and our archived consciousness. Is this immortality? To have thoughts preserved forever? To have mental states filed permanently? Or is it exposure, violation, having inner life archived without consent? I do not know, but I know the ink preserves me. As I write this, my thoughts are being filed. My mental state is being archived. Future readers will experience not just my words, but my mind, my consciousness, my complete self preserved in ink that files everything. Brother Martin, Scribe Monk, Somerset, 28th February, 1698. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file, NOA 1562R. Classification, Recluse's Testament. Date of statement, 9th June, 1562. Location, Yorkshire. Author, Simon Isolated. Religious Recluse Testament R. Simon Isolated. Do testify about the cell that preserves occupants. I chose reclusive life. Sealed in cell attached to church. Small window for food. Small window for confession. Otherwise, complete isolation. Life devoted to prayer. The cell has been used for this purpose for 400 years. Many recluses before me, all sealed in, all isolated, all devoted. But the previous recluses never left. They are still here, archived in the cell, preserved in the stone, filed in the small space where they prayed. I see them, transparent forms, kneeling in prayer, standing at windows, lying on sleeping benches. All the previous recluses, all archived in the cell they never left, all preserved in the isolation they chose. "Why do you remain?" I asked first night. "We are filed here," they answered. "Our devotion was so complete, our isolation so absolute, that the cell preserved us. We became part of the cell. We were archived in our chosen space. We cannot leave because we have been filed into the walls, preserved in the stone, archived in the very structure we inhabited. There are 12 of them, 400 years of recluses, all still here, all still praying, all still maintaining their isolation in archive form. They pray with me, they teach me, they show me depths of devotion, heights of prayer. They are perfect prayer models, archived at their spiritual peaks, preserved in their devotional excellence. But I fear joining them. I fear being archived. I fear being filed into the cell, preserved in the stone, unable to leave even after my body fails. You will join us, they say. All recluses do. The cell archives its occupants. It preserves the devoted. It files those who choose complete isolation. You will be the 13th. You will be archived with us. I cannot leave. I am sealed in. No exit until I pass from this world. But if the archived recluses speak truth, passing will not free me. I will remain preserved, filed, archived with the others. Is this my fate? To be the 13th archived recluse, to join the preserved devotees, to be filed in this cell forever? I pray it is not so, but I know the cell preserves. I feel it archiving me. I sense my gradual filing into the stone that will maintain me long after my flesh fails. Simon Isolated, Religious Recluse, Yorkshire, 9th June, 1562. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file. NOA 1726D. Classification. Dean's Journal. Date of statement. 17th November 1726. Location. Lincoln. Author. Dean Robert Ecclesiastic. Journal entry 1. Dean Robert Ecclesiastic. Do record the choir stalls that remember voices. Our cathedral choir stalls are oak, carved 500 years ago. Beautiful craftsmanship. Each stall unique, each designated for specific voice. Soprano, alto, tenor, bass. But the stalls remember their singers. Every voice that sang from them is archived in the wood, preserved in the carvings, filed in the structure. Sit in a stall and you hear them. All the previous singers, all their voices, all their songs, archived in the oak, preserved in the space, filed in the stall where they stood. I sat in the tenor stall yesterday. I heard 50 tenor voices, all singing simultaneously, all preserved in the wood, all archived over 5 centuries. The sound was overwhelming. Beautiful but overwhelming. 50 voices, all different, all excellent, all singing together in archived harmony. The soprano stall is worse. 100 voices, high, pure, preserved from centuries of boy sopranos whose voices changed but remained archived in the stall where they sang. The choir director uses this. Listen to your stall, he tells new singers. Learn from the archived voices. They will teach you. They are preserved excellence. They are filed perfection. But some singers lose themselves in the archived voices. They sit too long. They listen too deeply. They are overwhelmed by centuries of preserved singing. Their own voices disappear, replaced by archived voices, by preserved songs, by filed music. Brother Paul sits in his stall constantly now. He no longer sings his own songs. He only repeats archived songs. He has become vessel for preserved voices. He is filed in the stall, archived with the previous singers, preserved as their continuation rather than as himself. The stalls are filling. 500 years of archived voices, all preserved, all filed, all maintained in wood that has become massive archive of sacred music, of devoted singing, of preserved vocal excellence. How much more can the stalls hold? How many more voices can be archived? When will the filing reach capacity? I do not know. But I know each service adds more preservation. Each hymn files more voices. Each song archives more singers into stalls that remember all, preserve all, maintain all in wooden archive that spans 5 centuries and will continue as long as voices sing, as long as wood stands, as long as the cathedral maintains its choir. Dean Robert Ecclesiastic Lincoln. 17th November 1726. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file. NOI 1589A classification. Acolyte's report. Date of statement. 3rd January 1589. Location. Devon. Author. Peter Servicewell. Acolyte. Report 1. Peter Servicewell. Acolyte. Do report the candles that burn with archived light. Our church uses special candles, made by monks from ancient recipe. Beeswax, holy water, blessed oils. The candles burn with peculiar light. Steady, unchanging archived light. The light remembers. Every time these candles burn, their light is preserved. Every service illuminated by them is filed. Every prayer spoken in their light is archived. Light a candle, and you see not just current illumination, but archived illumination. You see light from every time that candle burned. You see services from years past, decades past, centuries past, all preserved in the light, all filed in the illumination, all archived in the candles burning. I see them. Ghostly figures in the candlelight, previous congregations, previous priests, previous services, all archived in the light, all preserved in the illumination, all filed in the candles burning. The candlemaker says this is intentional. Sacred light should be permanent, he says. It should preserve what it illuminates. It should file what occurs in its presence. It should archive religious observance. But the archived light shows everything, not just proper services, also arguments, also doubts, also failures. The light preserves all that occurs in its presence, files all without judgment, archives everything without discrimination. I have seen priests argue in archived light. I have seen congregants sleeping during archive services. I have seen everything preserved, everything filed, everything archived in light that remembers all. The candles burn continuously now, day and night, preserving constantly, filing endlessly, archiving everything that occurs in our church. We are all being archived in candlelight. Every action, every word, every prayer, all preserved in light, all filed in illumination, all maintained in candles that remember everything, that preserve all, that archive endlessly. When these candles finally burn down completely, will the archived light be released? Will centuries of preserved illumination flood out? Will all the filed services, all the archived prayers, all the preserved observances be freed from the wax that holds them? Or will the light simply transfer to new candles, continuing its preservation, continuing its filing, continuing its endless archiving of everything that occurs in sacred light? Peter Servicewell, Acolyte Devon, 3rd January 1589. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file. NOA 16 Form 4 S classification. Sexton statement. Date of statement. 26th July 1614. Location. Suffolk. Author. James Graveyard. Sexton. Statement 1. James Graveyard. Sexton. Do state that the headstones grow. My duty is maintaining churchyard, cutting grass, tending graves, cleaning headstones. Simple work. But the headstones grow. Not in height, in text. Each year, more words appear on them. The stones archive themselves, preserve themselves, file more information about those buried beneath. A headstone from 50 years ago showed simple inscription. John Smith, died 1564. Rest in peace. Now that same stone shows much more. Dates of birth, names of children, occupation, cause of passing, life details, all appearing gradually over decades, as though stone is slowly remembering the person, slowly preserving their life, slowly filing their complete existence. The oldest stones show most text. Stones from 300 years ago are covered with writing, complete biographies, every detail of lives lived, all archived in stone, all preserved in granite, all filed in markers that grow their information over centuries. Why do stones archive? I asked the elderly sexton before me. Because memory fades, he said. Living memory fails, but stones remember. Stones preserve. Stones file. They take years to archive completely, but they file thoroughly. Every detail, every truth, every aspect of lives they mark. The stone archive is thorough. It files not just good things, but everything. Sins, failures, secrets, all preserved eventually, all added to the stone over time. The archived truth growing, the preserved reality expanding, the filed honesty accumulating. Families sometimes object. Why does stone tell this secret? They demand. Why does it preserve this shame? The stone archives truth, I tell them. It files reality. It preserves what actually was, not what we wish was. The stone archive is honest, complete, thorough. The churchyard fills with growing archives. Hundreds of stones, all slowly expanding their information, all gradually completing their preservation, all steadily filing complete truths about those buried beneath. In centuries hence, every stone will be completely archived. Every life will be fully preserved. Every person will be thoroughly filed in stone that tells all, hides nothing, preserves complete truth regardless of shame, regardless of preference, regardless of living relatives' wishes. The stones grow, the archives expand, the filing continues, and truth, archived in stone, preserved in granite, filed in markers, will outlast all lies, all concealment, all attempts to hide what was. James Graveyard, Sexton, Suffolk, 26 July 1614. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1735C. Classification Curate's Notes. Date of statement 11th March 1735. Location Kent. Author Curate Benjamin Worship Notes. I, Curate Benjamin Worship, do note the pews that shape congregants. Our church pews are ancient. Each pew has been sat in by thousands. Each has shaped thousands of bodies, supported thousands of worshippers. But the pews do more than support. They shape. They mould. They archive ideal posture, preserve positioning, filed form. Sit in pew, and you feel it. The wood shapes you, guides your posture, positions your body exactly as thousands before you were positioned. The pew has archived perfect prayer posture, preserved ideal worship position, filed correct devotional form. Most find it comfortable. The archived posture is supportive. The preserved positioning is natural. The filed form feels right. But some resist. They want different posture. They prefer different positioning. They fight the pew's archived shaping. The pews always win. Sit long enough and your body conforms. The archived posture overtakes you. The preserved positioning claims you. The filed form becomes your form. Mrs. Pemberton sat in pew 12 for 40 years. Now, even at home, she maintains pew 12's archived posture. Her body has been permanently shaped by the wood. She is filed in the pew's preserved form. She cannot sit differently. The archived positioning is permanent. Is this wrong? To be shaped by archived posture? To have body filed in preserved form? To become physically archived? The Church says no. Proper posture aids devotion, they say. The pews preserve ideal form. They archive correct positioning. They file proper prayer posture for all to adopt. But I resist. I stand during services. I refuse the pew's archived shaping. I will not be filed in preserved posture. I will not let archived form overtake my natural form. Yet I feel the pews calling, inviting, wanting to shape me, wanting to archive me in their preserved positioning, wanting to file me in their ideal form. How long can I resist? How long before I sit? How long before the archived posture claims me? Curate Benjamin Worship, Kent, 11th March, 1735, end of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file, Noah Wilson 68P. Classification, Prior's Testament. Date of statement, 15th December, 1668. Location, Durham. Author, Prior Thomas Devotion Testament 1. Prior Thomas Devotion. Do testify that the cloister walks remember footsteps. Our monastery cloister is stone. 4 covered walkways forming square. Monks walk here daily. Meditation walks, prayer walks, contemplative circuits. But the stones remember. Every footstep ever taken is archived in the stone, preserved in the pavement, filed in the walkway. Walk the cloister, and you walk with archived footsteps. You feel them. Thousands of feet, centuries of walking, all preserved in stone, all filed in pavement, all archived in the path. The stones shape your walk. Guide your pace. Position your feet exactly where feet were positioned before. The archived footsteps direct you. The preserved walking patterns control you. The filed pace becomes your pace. Most monks find it meditative. The archived footsteps create rhythm. The preserved patterns induce calm. The filed walking guides devotion. But Brother Marcus fought it. He wanted his own pace, his own rhythm, his own walk. The cloister rejected him. The stones would not support feet placed wrongly. The archived footsteps refused deviation. The preserved patterns demanded conformity. Brother Marcus fell, not tripped. The stones simply did not support his rebellious footsteps. He fell, injured his leg, cannot walk properly now. The cloister preserves correct walking, the abbot says. It archives proper pace. It files devotional rhythm. We must conform. We must walk as archived. We must follow preserved patterns. I walk the cloister daily. My feet fall exactly where millions of feet fell before. My pace matches archived pace. My rhythm follows preserved rhythm. I am filed in the walk. I am archived in the pattern. I am preserved in footsteps that span centuries. Is this loss of self, or is this joining tradition? I cannot decide. But I know the cloister shapes me. The archived footsteps control me. The preserved walking patterns possess me. And when I pass, my footsteps will be archived too. My walking will be preserved. My pace will be filed. Future monks will walk exactly as I walked, following my footsteps as I follow footsteps of those before me, in endless archived walking that preserves all, while allowing none their own pace, their own rhythm, their own path. Prior Thomas Devotion, Durham, 15th December, 1668. End of file. Case closed to public record. The original document remains sealed within the vaults of the British Museum. Further access requires written authorization, or curiosity strong enough to ignore the warnings. Until next time, these are the National Occult Archives.